Master, President, Principal, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Melvin, for that wonderful introduction. Better than an introduction I recently had at a dinner that I was speaking at, and we got to the stage where the coffee was being served, and the chair of the event turned to me and said, do you want to speak now, or shall we let them carry on enjoying themselves for a while? It is a huge pleasure and privilege to be back here in Watsons, and poignant to be back here in the immediate aftermath of the sad news of the death of Roger Young. Roger was the headmaster of Watsons throughout my time here as a student. And he was truly an inspirational figure. He fashioned Watsons into the fantastic school that it still is. And we all owe him a huge debt of gratitude. For me, particularly, his notion of establishing what we knew at the time as the third form projects, now the S3 projects, was completely inspirational. I remember so well the 2 weeks that May when I went to Kinlochew in Torridon and spent 2 weeks there. We were mapping the regrowth of the old Caledonian pine forest. We played football, we climbed the mountains. It changed my life. I would not have gone on to climb the Munros, to live in Torridon, or to have the affection for the Scottish hills and moorland that I have carried with me for the rest of my life. That I owe to Roger Young and to the teachers who took us to Torridon at that time. I was thinking, what else stands out for me from my time here in Watsons? And there was one thing that I thought I did need to admit. Now, you will have to know that when I was here, the two schools had not merged. So Watsons here in Collington Road was just boys. For the school play in 1964, to mark the 400th anniversary of the birth of William Shakespeare, we did 5 scenes, famous scenes from Shakespeare. And it took place in the just newly built music school, that wonderful space with the hyperbolic paraboloid roof on top of it. The first scene of these 5 was the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. I have to admit, I was Juliet. I was perched on top of a school desk behind a screen with my head popping over the top, lit by a magenta spotlight. I have sort of never lived it down since. My time here was fantastic. And I'm reminded of a rather wonderful story about a new British ambassador who has just gone to Washington to take up his post as the ambassador to the United States. He arrives in Washington, he gets a call from the Washington Post. They're doing a survey of ambassadors, it's just coming up to Christmas. We'd like to know what the ambassador wants for Christmas. So he thinks for a moment or two, thinks, well, I'd better not sound too greedy or ambitious. He says, well, what I would really like for Christmas, he said, was a small jar of crystallized fruits. He thinks no more of it until 2 weeks later, the center page spread in the Washington Post, what the ambassadors of the world want for Christmas. The Russian ambassador wants world peace. The French ambassador wants a settlement in the Middle East. The German ambassador wants a safe future for the planet. And the British ambassador wants a small jar of crystallized fruits. This is, of course, an object lesson in being ambitious, in aiming high. And I'll come back to this in a moment, because you, all of you, the pupils here today, have your lives all before you. And my principal message to you is aim high. Aim, you will all be very different. You all have completely different skills, aptitudes, things you're good at, things you're not so good at. But what you need to do is to try and make sure that you can become the very best you that it's possible for you to be. And having that aim in front of you is something that you should take with you through all your schooling and into the world beyond. Now, one or two thoughts to help you on that journey. And I say this with some humility because, especially at the moment, those of my generation are not making a terribly good job of preparing the world for you. It will be up to you to make it better. One or two thoughts to help on that journey. First, your studies here and beyond will be incredibly and surprisingly important on that journey. I remember when I went up in front of the interview panel for the Kennedy Scholarship to go to Harvard for a year, and the panel of the great and the good on the other side of the huge table said to me, well, Mr. Smith, from what you've said in your application, it would seem you want to have some sort of a career in public life. What's the relevance of English literature to that? And I can remember swallowing very hard and saying to them that there was no better preparation for a career in public life than the study of English literature, because it told you more about character, relationships, society, joy, sorrow, the way in which the human mind and emotions worked, than anything else possibly could. That, I still believe, was true. And it's true of everything that you will seek to do and learn here. Second, always think about the big picture as well as about the detail of life. There's always a temptation to be buried in the whole stuff that assaults us every day of our lives, especially in a world of social media. But from time to time, take a moment to step back and look at the bigger picture. There's a famous story of President Kennedy when he was President of the United States, visiting NASA, the space station. And he went into the loo. And he was standing there washing his hands, and there was a man sweeping the floor in the washroom. And the President turned to him and asked him, he said, what do you do here? And the man turned to him and he said, Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. That was someone who saw the big picture, who knew that there was something big and important that he was part of. Third, it won't be easy. Success doesn't come in a straight line. You will have ambitions. You'll have things you want to achieve. You'll have directions you want to go in. And you will find that along the way, there'll be obstacles. There'll be things that stop you. There'll be corners that have to be navigated. There'll be things you have to get round. I remember one of the things that I was really keen to do when I was Secretary of State for Culture was to restore free admission to all the national museums and galleries around the country. It took me 4 years to do it. Simple objective. I had to persuade a very reluctant Prime Minister that it was worth doing. He now talks about it as one of the best things his government ever did. I had to persuade an even more reluctant Chancellor of the Exchequer to come up with some money. I had to persuade the European Union to relieve VAT from museums that were free. I had to persuade some reluctant museum directors that it was worth doing in the first place. But we got there. Actually, I finally got permission to do it, provided that the Chancellor of the Exchequer could make the announcement rather than me. But that was an object lesson in having an objective, knowing what you want to achieve, but making sure that you overcome the obstacles in getting there. Two final thoughts. First, leadership is not about being out in front of people and telling them to follow you. Leadership is all about drawing people around you and bringing them on a common journey with you. It's little known that Nelson was a big admirer of Napoleon. And there's a fascinating letter in the archives of the National Maritime Museum, where Nelson writes to a friend. He says, the reason that Napoleon is a great general is that he says to his troops, not allez, you go there, but allons, let us together go there. And that lesson ought to be inscribed on the wall of every chief executive in business up and down the country and every world leader. Allons, not allez. The final thought, and it is far and away the most important thing that you need to remember if you are going to have the chance to go out and change the world. And that is, you cannot claim to lead other people until and unless you know yourself. You know who you are, what values you have, what makes you tick, what you believe in. And hold fast, please, to that in everything that you do here and beyond. So, there you have some very brief, sketchy thoughts. Your studies will be important. Always think of the big picture. There will be difficulties you have to overcome. Work with people, not on top of them. And above all, know yourself and what makes you, you. That brings me back to the aiming high bit. Being ambitious. Seeking to do the very best you can. There's a poem by Apollinaire that I've always loved ever since I came across it. And it goes as follows. Come to the edge, he said. We can't. We're afraid, they responded. Come to the edge, he said. We can't. We will fall, they responded. Come to the edge, he said. And so they came. And he pushed them. and they flew. For you, over the next years of your life, you're going to fly. Make sure you enjoy it. Thank you.